Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking Charles Dickens's absolute classic novella and turning it into your structured, chronological study guide. If you're looking to really lock down the key themes, the essential quotes, and the major character arcs of A Christmas Carol, well, you are in exactly the right place. We are going to track Ebenezer Scrooge's journey from a miserable miser to a genuinely generous benefactor and give you everything you need to deeply understand this iconic text. Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're going to cover the plot and some key vocabulary, dive into Scrooge and the ghosts, walk through the story stave by stave, and then wrap up with those all-important themes and quotes. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, Plot Overview and Vocabulary.
Okay, so here is a rapid-fire overview mapping out the story, from the inciting incident right through the rising and falling action to Scrooge's ultimate change. The whole thing kicks off on a bitterly cold Christmas Eve with a terrifying supernatural warning from his old partner Jacob Marley. Then, over the course of one night, Scrooge gets visited by three spirits at midnight and 1 a.m. They force him to confront his past, his present, and a truly bleak future. Finally, he wakes up on Christmas Day, a completely transformed man.
Now, before we go too deep into those specific events, there are a few Tier 2 vocabulary words you really need to have in your back pocket. Understanding the word avarice is absolutely critical for analyzing Scrooge's character at the beginning of the text. Dickens shows us how as Scrooge aged, his face actually began to wear the signs of care and avarice. He's a guy who literally chose a golden idol over human connection. Next up is destitute. Dickens uses the destitute, freezing streets of London to highlight the severe social injustice of the Victorian era. Throughout the entire text, we are forced to confront how grinding poverty affects everyday families, like the Cratchits, who are just struggling to survive without the basic necessities of life. Ultimately, this whole explainer is tracking a journey from misanthropic isolation to philanthropic moral responsibility. A philanthropic person is generous in giving assistance to the poor, which is exactly what Scrooge learns to become by the final stave. Keep these three words in your mind, guys. They're basically the architectural pillars of his entire character arc.
Moving right along to Section 2, Scrooge and the Ghosts.
Dickens is a master of contrast, and he brilliantly set Scrooge's greed right up against the incredible generosity of Fred and Fezziwig, using them as foils. You have Scrooge, who is parsimonious and solitary, a guy who refuses to even pay for a single extra lump of coal to heat his own counting house. But then you have his nephew Fred, who is genial and forgiving, and you have his old boss Fezziwig, a welcoming master who uses his power to actually make his employees happy. These contrasts highlight exactly what Scrooge is missing out on. To bridge that massive gap, it takes a serious supernatural intervention. First, the gentle, weirdly childlike ghost of Christmas past arrives to expose the harsh truth of Scrooge's history. Then, the jolly ghost of Christmas present, dressed in this vibrant green robe, holding a cornucopia, shows up to remind Scrooge of Christmas indulgence and abundance. These first two spirits use his own memories and current realities to slowly start chipping away at that icy exterior. But then, wow, what a contrast we get with the final spirit. The ghost of Christmas yet to come is terrifying. It's Reaper-like and remains completely, unnervingly silent. This solemn phantom just glides in like a mist along the ground, perfectly symbolizing the bleak, ominous future waiting for Scrooge, and really, wider society if he doesn't change his ways. It forces Scrooge to confront the ultimate consequence of his avarice, which is a completely lonely, unmourned death. All right, let's walk through this chronologically, starting with Section 3, Staves 1 and 2. In Stave 1, we get this absolutely iconic simile, solitary as an oyster. It hits the nail on the head, perfectly capturing Scrooge's total isolation and his bitter misanthropic attitude. He flat out refuses to be part of the human community. The weather outside is bitterly cold, but honestly, it matches Scrooge himself. He's tight-fisted, sharp as flint, and totally closed off from the world. But that total isolation gets completely shattered by our inciting incident. Marley's ghost shows up as this incredible, gothic warning, condemned to carry literal, heavy chains that were forged by his own egocentric, capitalist greed. Marley tells Scrooge, "I made it, link by link, and yard by yard." He's acting as a terrifying mirror, showing Scrooge the exact torment that's waiting for him if he keeps ignoring his social responsibilities.
So the really crucial point here in Stave 2 is watching Scrooge's remorse finally start to grow. The ghost of Christmas past forces him to relive all these lost opportunities. We see him as this completely solitary, neglected kid at school, then we get the warmth of Fezziwig's generous party. But the real turning point is watching his fiancée Belle break off their engagement because a golden idol of wealth has taken her place in his heart. Seeing these memories play out triggers his first genuine pangs of duty and regret.
Which ramps up the tension and brings us to section 4, staves 3 and 4.
Now, this is a massive moment in the text. Dickens uses these two starving, allegorical children, ignorance and want, to explicitly warn Victorian society against shrugging off its social responsibility. Hidden away beneath the robes of the ghost of Christmas present, these monstrous kids represent the direct, horrible consequences of the Industrial Revolution and those Malthusian ideologies that just ignored the poor. The ghost sternly warns Scrooge to beware them both, but especially the boy, ignorance.
Moving right into stave 4, Dickens paints an incredibly grim picture of extreme poverty. The final silent ghost takes Scrooge through the darkest, most impoverished streets of London. It reeks with crime, filth, and misery. He sees businessmen just casually brushing off the news of a dead man, and people in a pawn shop literally selling that same dead man's stolen clothes. The atmosphere here is just suffocating with impending doom. And then we hit the breaking point. Facing his own neglected, terrifying tombstone, Scrooge finally experiences full, absolute repentance. It clicks. The unmourned dead man is him. Desperately seeking any reassurance that he can sponge away the writing on that stone, he pleads with the phantom, declaring, "I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." He is finally truly ready to change.
And thankfully, that brings us to section 5, stave 5, the resolution.
When he wakes up on Christmas morning, the psychological transformation is just night and day. These joyful similes completely prove it. He's saying, I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. It's such a sharp contrast to that heavy, bitter language we saw back in stave 1. Even the weather has shifted from foggy and biting to clear, bright, golden sunlight. Scrooge is just overflowing with gratitude for a second chance. But here's the absolute most important takeaway. Scrooge's redemption isn't just a change of heart. It is proven through immediate philanthropic action. He provides massive back payments to the charity workers he had yelled at the day before. He buys the biggest priced turkey in the shop for the Cratchit family. He raises Bob Cratchit's wages on the spot, and eventually he becomes a second father to Tiny Tim, who, crucially, did not die. To wrap up our academic study guide, let's head into section 6, key themes and quotes. If you are organizing an essay, you can use a breakdown like this to clearly link Dickens's characters to his broader themes. You've got isolation, perfectly embodied by a stave 1 Scrooge who is sharp as flint. You've got social responsibility, represented by Marley's self-forged chains. And, of course, redemption, captured in Scrooge's desperate promise to not shut out the lessons of the spirits. These quotes really anchor the entire narrative structure of the book. So, as you prepare for your exams or just reflect on this incredible story, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Does the need for philanthropic responsibility still echo in our modern world? Dickens wrote this to challenge the extreme social stratification of Victorian England, but look around today. Have we truly erased the allegories of ignorance and want, or do they still sit waiting beneath the surface of our own society? Keep that in mind as you study. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning!